ridge. And we proved that by digging into it and finding those little pieces of Antrim shale. I was just saying we just recently got into a staff discussion about this particular ridge here, because I walked out here several times and I would pick up these pieces of Antrim shale and I'd say, oh, it's a waterform beach ridge because the little pieces of Antrim shale are here. But somebody argued with me, Mark described, and we looked at the structure and said, wait a second, that doesn't make sense from the way this thing formed. And one of my colleagues who spent a lot of time out here said, no, it's all fine sand. So I came out here, I said, you got to prove this. So I came out here with a soil core that would go down about this deep and went up and down this ridge and took about 20 cores one day. And each and every core, when I got down below the disturbed surface here, remember this is the surface that's been highly disturbed, is nothing but fine-grained sand with some, occasionally you get down far enough, some silt particles in it. So it's a wind-blown dune sitting on top of a shallow water, slow water deposit. So this is was in a very shallow lake, probably a very slow recession, and there was a time when these spits were forming off of Stony Island. We use these terms in order to communicate amongst ourselves. They're human terms. The things that are out here are just doing what they're supposed to do. That's a good time probably because one of the things we do, and we talk about it a little bit more at Powderhorn maybe at our free stop there, but we have a lot of plants growing out in here. Most of what you see here are native plants. This is what we would call, for the forest preserves for this region, a pretty undisturbed woodland. And despite all of the impacts that people have made on this site, it's probably about as close to a pre-settlement condition, which is kind of another iffy sort of a, doesn't mean anything specific, just some guideline basis we use to kind of evaluate things, than most of our preserves. And there's a couple of reasons for that. It's a fairly small area that's in this condition. One of the reasons that it's in fairly good condition is there's a bike trail that's just a few hundred yards right through the woods here. It's very close to where we parked the bus. We're angling off of it. That bike trail's on an old railroad. Great. There was a train track there. All of our communities, almost all, well not quite all, but almost all of our communities in the Chicago region, the upper Midwest, are at some level or another what we call fire-dependent communities. They evolved with fire, with wildfires, and with Indian set fires. Indians had a big impact on the landscape, despite what some people think otherwise. And so the communities developed, and these open woodlands and prairies and savannas